Hello everyone, let's have more news about the Lakers, but first don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. The Minnesota Timberwolves playoff journey concluded with a decisive 124-94 loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder in Game 5 of the Western Conference Finals, marking their second straight exit at this stage. Despite notable victories over the Los Angeles Lakers and Golden State Warriors earlier in the postseason, the Timberwolves were unable to overcome the Thunder, who limited Anthony Edwards to 23 points per game on 47.1% shooting and 28.1% from beyond the arc. Following the loss, Edwards acknowledged his struggles and expressed optimism about the team's future, also emphasizing his youth and the experience gained from reaching the conference finals twice by age 23. However, former Los Angeles Lakers guard Lou Williams, who played 17 seasons in the NBA, took issue with Edwards' comments. Williams highlighted the rarity of deep playoff runs, noting that in his career, he reached the conference finals only once. He cautioned that the Western Conference is becoming increasingly competitive, with stars like Luka Doncic and Victor Wembanyama poised to make significant impacts in the years to come. "I love the attitude, but Ant just slightly missed the mark," the former Sixth Man of the Year winner said. "I've been to the Eastern Conference Finals once in 17 years. That is something you don't want to take for granted. Those opportunities come few and in between." Williams added, "These teams are going to get better. Sometimes you got to take advantage of the opportunities that's in front of you instead of looking ahead. Everybody around you is building." The Timberwolves will now look to improve on their roster ahead of next season and hopefully reach the NBA Finals for the first time in their history. Now let's go to another video. Don't forget to leave a like.
So here's Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who had this to say. Said that team, talking about the championship team, said that team, we had a lot of moments where everything just clicked for us. Off the court, on the court, inviting to each other's houses. We were just hanging out with each other. Those were my brothers. I spent more time with my team than my family. I think if we kept that team together, we would have run off two more. There would be no more GOAT talk. That would have put LeBron at 6. Well, first of all, let me just say this. Even if LeBron had 6, there are people that would still deny that he's the greatest of all time. That would be a thing because everybody is so entrenched into their own opinions. It's Jordan, it's LeBron. Some people like to throw some other players in. It doesn't really matter. What the important thing is that they're all incredibly talented players. But for the Lakers, this would have upped their championship total. That would have been an extremely important thing. Obviously, now with the Boston Celtics getting to 18, which is, of course, gross. In addition to that, perhaps then the Lakers never go down the path where they trade for Russell Westbrook, which we all know sent the franchise into a dark period for a few seasons there, and one that, frankly, they are still paying for the sins of that trade, in addition to the mistake of letting Alex Caruso walk away. So we could be looking at a very, very different timeline had the Lakers kept their championship team together. But why did they not just keep that championship team together, especially when, as Kentavious Caldwell-Pope said, the chemistry was so great. And that was what was really remarkable about the Lakers championship run in 2019-2020. So there are people out there that will tell you, oh, it doesn't count. The championship doesn't count because it was in the bubble. It was during COVID. That doesn't count the same. No. Don't listen to any of that. The Lakers were the best team during the regular season that year, and the best team won the championship. That was going to be the result regardless of where the playoffs were played, regardless of whether it was played at Disney World or if it was played on the Lakers' home court. By the way, the Lakers were the number one team in the Western Conference. They lost home court advantage by everybody going and playing in the bubble at Disney World. Yet people don't like to mention that or acknowledge that fact that the Lakers actually lost something by having to go and play in the bubble at Disney World. But they were the best team during the regular season. They were a very deserving championship. But what was really striking about that group, that 2019-2020 team, was how quickly they all came together. And Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was there talking about it, the fact that they all got along. And more than that, there was an instant chemistry, a camaraderie with those guys. But it was more than just that. It was a on-court chemistry that we also saw. Yes, it extended off the court, and that's important, of course, for the morale of the team. But those guys, it was so unique the way they all came together from day one. Everyone knew exactly what their role was. Everybody knew exactly what the team needed them to do in order to win. And that's what made that group so special. We talked about this a lot back then about how much of an outlier that was and how it felt like for a few seasons after that, the Lakers were maybe a little bit too comfortable with tinkering with their roster, thinking the pieces would all just fit together the way they did during that magical 2019-2020 season. From day one, from training camp, the guys were talking about how everybody understood their role. Jared Dudley, I remember being one of the first to use the phrase star in your role. And they had a lot of stars in their role. Avery Bradley, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, JaVale McGee, Dwight Howard, Alex Caruso, on and on. And later, Markieff Morris joined part of the way through the season. On the buyout market, they had a number of players who just knew exactly what the team needed from them, with one exception, and that was Kyle Kuzma, who didn't really know exactly what his role was going to be because his versatility was about as much of a curse as it was a blessing. They didn't know exactly how to utilize Kyle Kuzma. And I thought we saw that over the course of the season where his role would shift. Sometimes they needed him to score. Sometimes they needed him to rebound or facilitate or whatever. So Kyle Kuzma's role was constantly shifting on that team. But in general, everyone else on that squad had a great sense of exactly what the Lakers needed from them. And that's what allowed them to excel on the court from the get-go. If you remember back then, all the talk was about, well, are the Lakers really good enough? After all, they didn't get Kawhi, right? It was the Clippers got Kawhi. The Clippers are the team that's going to be a problem. The Lakers had to settle for Danny Green and some other role players they brought in. They brought in Quinn Cook. They tried to get DeMarcus Cousins. They did get him, and then he blew out his knee over the summer. And then they had to pivot to Dwight Howard. Is that even going to work out? Dwight Howard again? How's that going to look? And then once the season started, right away, everybody went, oh, okay, the Lakers are actually a pretty good team. And as the season went on, they continued to look more and more impressive. They did lose some games to some high-level opponents, but right before everything shut down, due to COVID, the Lakers have picked up wins back-to-back over the Milwaukee Bucks and the Clippers, the two chief rivals for the Lakers, or what we thought was going to be the two chief rivals for a championship that year. The Lakers picked up wins over those two teams back-to-back, and then everything shut down. Although technically there was a loss to the Brooklyn Nets right after that. But we don't remember that at all. But then everything shut down. But so the Lakers had finally kind of gotten over the hump and proven what they were as a basketball team, and then things shut down. And so the Lakers were just starting to roll. Giannis Antetokounmpo, in fact, had just gotten hurt. He had a knee injury shortly after playing the Lakers. You still get people saying, oh, the Lakers benefited because everything shut down for 4 months. No, I mean, the Bucks benefited because Giannis had just gotten hurt. This gave him a chance to recover. And then the Lakers and the rest of the NBA restarted the season. So that group was particularly special. I don't think Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is wrong to say that they could have won multiple championships. Hell, I think they probably could have won in 2021. And that team wasn't as good as the 2019-2020 team, but they could have won it again in 2021 had they been healthy. I am very convinced that they would have come out of that first-round series against the Phoenix Suns and probably got all the way to the West Finals had LeBron James and Anthony Davis been healthy. Unfortunately, they were not. We had LeBron dealing with that ankle injury. That was the year that Solomon Hill rolled up on LeBron's ankle. LeBron was on pace to win MVP that year, and then he went down to that ankle injury, and then Anthony Davis dealing with a groin injury in the playoffs. And so that ultimately put the Lakers out in the first round. Had those injuries not occurred, they've probably got another championship at least. That said, I don't necessarily fault the Lakers for making the moves that they did in between the 2019-2020 and 2020-2021 seasons because it was such a short turnaround between the end of that championship season and the start of the next one because COVID had shifted everything back. It was a total of, I believe, about 70 days between the final game, the last game of the NBA Finals, Game 6, and the start of the next season. So the Lakers felt like they needed some fresh legs, guys who hadn't played deep in the playoffs, and that's where we saw the Lakers trade for Dennis Schroeder, and they gave up Danny Green plus a draft pick that could have been Desmond Bane or Jaden McDaniels. Yeah, in hindsight, that one certainly hurt. They gave up JaVale McGee in order to get Marc Gasol. They added Wesley Matthews, as well as the reigning sixth man of the year, Montrezl Harrell. Look, at the time, these were all considered great moves. In fact, the Lakers were in a league poll, were considered to be the team who had the best offseason. So they had just won the championship and then got the vote for having the best offseason of anybody. Now, of course, hindsight being 2020, they probably should have just dealt with the fatigue factor and kept that entire team together, the 2019-2020 team, and recognized that what they had was something special. But I'll tell you what the bigger sin was than breaking off some of the pieces of the 2019-2020 season. It was the trade for Russell Westbrook the next summer, that summer of 2021, because that was where they lost their identity as a basketball team. They ushered in a new era of roster building, 2 stars and a bunch of versatile tough defensive guys that could shoot the three, that could do all kinds of things out there on the floor. That was the Lakers roster build in 2019, 2020. That was what led them to a championship. That is the model that everybody has been following since then. And now we're starting to see a shift with a little bit even more emphasis on size, particularly the center position, starting to become back in style right now. But a number of teams have been basically following that model that the Lakers created back then. And the Lakers, perhaps at the time, didn't recognize what it was that they had in that group, or maybe didn't value it strongly enough. And so they wound up pivoting and going back to what had worked in the past. And that was a 3-star roster build around Russell Westbrook, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis. The 3-star build, now more of a thing of the past. We do see some teams attempt it. The Phoenix Suns infamously attempting it this year, and it did not go well. Today's NBA, you simply have to have depth, and the Lakers really started off that era with.
So it's going to be very interesting to see what the Miami Heat end up doing this upcoming offseason. There's some talks about them kind of pushing whatever little chips that they have in, try to upgrade this roster and end up hopefully competing for, a deep playoff run, maybe even an NBA championship. Or the other route is just hit the full tank rebuild mode and kind of just start from scratch. And, there's talks about Bam Adebayo potentially being on the trade block, guys like Andrew Wiggins, right? There's several players and pieces that could yield a solid return for Miami. What is their market? What does it look like? I think that's kind of up for debate. I think there's questions about that. Bam Adebayo, I do think, would give a pretty solid return. I think there are several teams I would love to bring in Bam Adebayo. His versatility, his defensive versatility, as well as his offensive versatility, right? He's not a guy that's like, this 30 and 15 guy, but he is, basically a 20 and 10 guy that can make plays and do a little bit of everything out there on the basketball court. And could be just a really solid all-star caliber type player that you could slot in to a roster that is already ready to maybe take some strides to contention. And then Andrew Wiggins gives you that 3-and-D, self-creating, create a little bit for others on any given night. Could be, your first, second best player randomly, right? Just go get you 30. Right? He's a guy that Andrew Wiggins has always kind of been an anomaly, right? Because there are moments where you're just like, yeah, now you see why he was the number one pick. And then there are moments where you're like, yeah, this guy's terrible, right? It's just really weird. He's probably best as your third or fourth guy. If you're relying on him to be your second or third, you're probably in trouble, but maybe as your third or fourth, right? Depending on who your first and second guy are, could make some sense. But Tyler, why are you talking about the Miami Heat? Because the Los Angeles Lakers are already being linked to the Miami Heat. And if guys like Andrew Wiggins and Bam Adebayo do become available for trade, or at least conversations get opened, right, and Miami starts fielding offers, the Lakers are expected to put in offers for both guys. Now, they wouldn't be able to go and get both guys because you're talking $70 million in salary, right? That would be pretty difficult to pull off. Now, again, if you trade Austin Reeves and everything, then yes, technically you could get there. But are the Lakers really going to do something like that? He's going into contract and $51 million, and then plus Andrew Wiggins making $20+ million, right? So it's just kind of you're talking again 75 million that you'd have to send out. It'd be incredibly complicated. Now you could argue, Andrew Wiggins, LeBron James, and Bam Adebayo, or Luka Doncic too. I think it didn't mention him. Those four, you kind of have your foundation. Dorian Finney-Smith, you probably would have to trade in that deal, right? So it's are those four good enough plus a bunch of vet minimum guys to go win you a championship? I don't know. Maybe, depends on kind of what version of Andrew Wiggins do you get. If you get that, hey, this guy could be, finals MVP, right? Like he was with the Warriors during that run, then yeah, maybe. But I think realistically, you're probably not looking at that. But I want to start with Andrew Wiggins, right? Because Andrew Wiggins, again, is making $26.2 million. This past season, he's going to be going into $28.2 million and then $30 million player option, which he's probably opting into. So he's going to be owed essentially just under $60 million over the next 2 years. And you'd have to send out $28 million, basically $29 million. Because remember, Lakers have to send out more than they take back because they're an apron team. So you're talking about sending out basically $29 million. So you're looking at essentially Rui Hachimura and Gabe Vincent just to go get Andrew Wiggins. okay, is that worth Andrew Wiggins? I would love to have Andrew Wiggins. I think Andrew Wiggins would be great on this Lakers team. I think Andrew Wiggins could really do some damage and make some noise, right? He gives you that athleticism, gives you the rebounding, gives you the switchability on the defense side of things, gives you the switchability on the offense side of things, right? Like, he's a very good basketball player, right? But I just think, given, at $30 million a year, I just think there's other guys that can do a lot of the same things that you'd be looking for from Andrew Wiggins that wouldn't cost as much, at least financially, right? Like, and might even cost as much, asset wise to go and acquire, which I think would kind of put them in a weird spot as well, right? So I'm not against Andrew Wiggins. If you could get him for the right price, then sure. But I just think, given his salary and what he's going to be owed, I think the Lakers would be best kind of looking at the assets that they would have to allocate in order to acquire him, kind of using that to go elsewhere, personally. But what about Bam Adebayo, right? Now, Bam Adebayo, he is, again, all-star level talent, would immediately kind of help expedite the Lakers defense and, rebounding and just getting versatility out there on the basketball court. You look at this past season, he averaged 18 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, which, again, guy that can do pretty much everything you could ask for out there. As far as being that big physical interior presence, it's not really that. He's 6'9", 7'1" wingspan. But he is a guy that, again, can put the ball on the deck, create for himself, create for others. He's 27 years old. He'll be 28 this July, so he's on the right side of 30. Again, could be a nice little foundation piece for the foreseeable future. He's got some weight behind him at 255, so he's not like, 6'9", 225 or something like that, to where it's like he's just going to get bullied and pushed around. No, he can hang in on the inside and hang with the big boys. Again, he would be immediately the Lakers, third best player and a guy that could really make some noise. But again, I kind of default to, with Bam Adebayo, the money in which he's getting and making, right? Like, is that really what you want to allocate your assets and resources and all the things that you'd have to put in order to acquire him, right? Talk about a guy that's going to be in the 50 millions, right? 60 million, and you're going to have him for multiple years. Now, you could argue that he's basically locked in. He's got his rate. He's got his salary, right? You kind of know what you need to do to kind of maneuver and finagle around that, right? Now, I've talked about, a Jaren Jackson Jr. It's a little different, right? Jaren Jackson Jr., he's a guy that is, one, younger, two, is a guy that, again, gives you that same level of defense, shot creation, whatnot. I also think he kind of gives you a little bit more of what you need from the Lakers, right? Like, or for the Lakers, I should say, right? Like, and on top of that, he's cheap for another year, right? Like, he's literally going to be making less than half of what Bam Adebayo would be making for that year, which, again, kind of gives you more time to figure out what you need to do. Plus, Jaren Jackson's new contract, right, shouldn't be, if I'm not mistaken, is a little less than Bam Adebayo's, right? But then, again, that gives you another year of like, okay, what does LeBron do? Does he retire? Because at that point, then you have Jaren Jackson kind of come in. Is Jaren Jackson and, Luka Doncic better than Bam Adebayo and Luka Doncic? I personally think so, right? Jaren Jackson just taller, longer, a little bigger, right? Like, I'd rather go that route if you're the Lakers. The other, kind of obvious one is, would Miami even trade those guys? Right? Pat Riley, be pretty petty, right? I don't think he wouldn't trade with the Lakers. I do think he would trade with the Lakers, but if the Lakers have LeBron James, would he trade with the Lakers? See, that's the difference, right? It's very different when LeBron James, because of the way that he kind of felt about the whole LeBron situation and whatnot. Now, you could argue, if Lakers offer and are willing to give up the best package to go and acquire Bam Adebayo, you want to take the best deal possible, right? And it'd be nice to kind of send him out west to where you don't have to see him as much in the east, and especially if you're rebuilding and whatnot, and kind of have to go through like the whole fan thing and stuff. So, like, again, there's arguments to be made either way with a Bam Adebayo. Again, Lakers probably not going to get both of them. It kind of seems like it'd be one or the other. But both guys are guys that, one, fill a need, type of players Lakers would go after as far as like the names on the back of the jerseys and whatnot. And again, they are good players. Like if you told me tomorrow the Lakers traded for Bam Adebayo, I'm not going to be like, oh man, what are the Lakers doing? Why are they being so like? No, I'd be like, hey, you know what? That's huge for the Lakers, right? Like that's something that could be really good. But like, where is Bam as far as the scaling goes, right? Like is Bam with Luka enough of a 1-2 punch for you to win an NBA championship? I mean, for right now, you could argue, well, you have LeBron James, Bam, and Luka. So Bam as your third option, very different. But again, how long is LeBron sticking around for, right? LeBron, if he plays another 4 years, then okay, like now you have those three guys for the next 4 years. But if he doesn't, and he only plays a year or two and then retires, well, then now you got 2+ years of Bam and Luka as like your kind of your main sole guys. That's it. Those are the only two guys that you got as your stars, and now you're moving forward with them, and you're kind of building around, putting the pieces around it. But to me, it's just like what you'd have again. Like I don't think the Lakers, if you could get like a Jaren Jackson Jr., it's different because he's cheap enough, and you'd only have to give up, Austin Reeves, Dalton Connect probably for asset purposes, and then like a Maxi Kleba, right? Where like Bam Adebayo, you'd have to give up Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, right? Like it just starts stacking things. It's like, ugh, I think outside of that, I don't think the Lakers necessarily need this like super skilled center. Personally, I don't think that the Lakers like just go get that lob threat center. And I think you're fine. I think you're in good shape in that regard. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. I pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? And Phil, what are your thoughts? Do you like the idea of Bam Adebayo? Do you like the idea of Andrew Wiggins? Do you think like stay away from both of them? Do you think no, go get one or the other? However you feel, either way, I'd love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.
The Los Angeles Lakers are going to target veteran centers this offseason, but they may also want to bring in a younger option they can start developing. However, they don't have a draft pick until number 55 in the second round. Appealing options will be limited that late in the draft, so the Lakers could take a bet on upside. General manager Rob Pelinka has actually done a good job in undrafted free agency and late in the draft, so he'll take this draft pick seriously. Looking overseas could be the wise play in the second round. In his most recent mock draft for Bleacher Report, Jonathan Wasserman projects the Lakers to select Reggio Emilia center Mohamed Faye with the number 55 pick. Mohamed Faye's defensive range is the draw, though he's also used his size and quick leaping to rack up 59 dunks so far this year, Wasserman wrote. He could be tougher holding his ground defending the post, but the way he's able to slide his feet and cover ground could help teams picture a switchable big who guards in space and blocks shots. Scouting report on Feifei is a young player at 20, so there's still room for him to develop. He's got great size at 6'10" and is very lengthy. However, he doesn't project to be a great offensive player, according to a scouting report from Sports Illustrated. Faye is a limited offensive player as of today, and that's the end of the floor where he looks the most raw, Sports Illustrated wrote. He's a good rim runner and lob threat who can also generate second chance looks on the offensive glass, but he isn't really able to create his own shot. Faye needs to improve his touch and develop go-to moves in the post and hasn't shown much as a shooter. Most everything he does today is in the paint near the basket. That doesn't mean he has no offensive value, but he doesn't project to be a dominant player on that end. And you, fan, what do you think about Mohamed Faye's situation? Leave your opinion in the comments.